Are you on the fence on getting the new MacBook Pro 14-inch base model? It might be time to pull the trigger on a new laptop. I've been using the base model MacBook Pro 14-inch for about 4 months now. I edit videos, photos, and code programs, but by no means am I an industry professional. So you're probably asking, why did I get this laptop? I wanted something that could essentially do it all. After months of use, this machine fits seamlessly into my workflow. But is it right for you? And are you having second thoughts about going all in on the base model MacBook Pro? Now, I'm hoping that this review will help you in making a decision, and at the very least, kind of give you an idea what it'd be like owning one of these machines. I'm going to talk about what I liked, what I disliked, and if this purchase was worth it. Let's take a look. Alright, let's start off with what I liked. And first we got the design. Aesthetically, the MacBook is very pleasing to the eye, with round edges, somewhat flat design, and very minimal branding. The only real branding that you can find is on the bottom of the MacBook, with its name engraved in the back. I'm a very big fan of this minimal looking design. Essentially, it looks like a thin slab of steel till you creak it open through the middle, and you're greeted with this amazing looking screen. It's got a liquid retina XDR display with a screen resolution of 3024 by 1964 and ProMotion with refresh rates of up to 120 Hz. Now, this screen is better than any laptop screen that I've ever used, and it's even better than my 2 monitor screens behind me. It just looks so good with the deep blacks, the vivid colors, the sharpness in the images, the high contrast, and HDR video looks really good on this display. Let's move on to the performance side. And no, I won't be doing any benchmarks. If you're looking for benchmarks, there's definitely a ton more videos that do it better than I can. But I'll talk about my use case and how it's worked with my workflow. So I use apps like Premiere Pro, Lightroom, Parallels, Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio. And with using all those apps, I haven't experienced any slowdown or jittering. I can honestly say this machine is a little overkill for what I need it for. But it does give me the headroom if I ever wanted to edit in 4K video or create apps with thousands of lines of code. I essentially future-proofed. One thing I do have to mention though, is out of all the programs and applications that I've run, I've yet to hear the fans turn on. When I run Parallels, basically emulating Windows OS on this Mac machine, I do feel a bit of heat, but nothing too alarming, and still no fans turn on. Now, speaking about audible sound noises, let's talk about the speakers. Now, the speakers sound almost like, and I really mean this, almost, bookshelf speakers squished into the tiny body of the MacBook Pro. They sound so good. Here's a sound test between my Bose speaker and the MacBook Pro speakers, just for a little comparison. I mean, at this point, I'm not even talking about features anymore. It's just more of an experience. Let's move along and let's talk about another pro about this MacBook Pro, and that's the battery life. So you're probably asking me, how long can you use this before you have to charge it? For me, I can use it for an entire day of school. So let's say 2 classes, each 3 hours long. That would include note-taking, coding, and some casual video consumption during class. And by the end of the day, when I get home, I'd still have a decent amount of battery left. So if I'm not running any heavy apps throughout the day, I could easily get a day's worth of battery on one charge. Now, if I'm using battery draining apps like Parallels, for example, that emulates Windows OS on the MacBook Pro, in 3 hours use, I could easily see the battery draining about 30%. Now for any other laptop, if I'm bringing it to school and using it for note-taking and coding, I'd have to charge it once, if not twice in the day. But with the MacBook Pro, I'm lasting an entire day of use from it. Another thing that I like is the trackpad. Now the trackpad on this laptop it's pretty big. It's actually massive. And I like how responsive it is. But besides all that, what makes it so good is the gesture controls. I really enjoy the tap to click feature, as well as the forefinger to drag. And honestly, sometimes I'd opt from using my mouse and just use the trackpad instead. Now along with the trackpad, I do have to also mention the keyboard. It's a really nice keyboard. The black on black just makes it look so elegant and clean, and the typing experience is definitely better than your standard chiclet keyboard. But I wouldn't put it on the level of a mechanical keyboard. The keys also have a concave shape to them, making resting and typing just feel so natural. And on the top right, you do have Touch ID for when you want to sign in or purchase items online. The last pro that I liked about the MacBook Pro is definitely the ports that it has. I mean, it has everything that I would ever need, and I don't see myself having to carry a dongle around with me anymore. Now let's talk about what I didn't like about the MacBook Pro base model 14-inch. Now the keyboard is great, but one thing I have to mention is that they do get quite greasy, along with the trackpad. Now it's not so evident all the time, but in different light angles, you could definitely see the finger sweat on the most used keys and on the trackpad as well. I wish they were made out of a PBT material like they have on keyboards, which would help in not making them look so shiny from all the typing. Now one thing that this laptop has on its display, no other display has, no other monitor has, it's the notch. I have to mention the notch. Now it took some time to getting used to, and by time I mean like just a couple of hours, but it's definitely something to mention. Now if you put a dark background as your wallpaper, the notch just completely disappears, and it's embedded in the menu bar anyways. The only time you really notice it is if you have a application with a bunch of tabs that spans across the entire row. But other than that, you don't even notice it anymore. Now another con is the overall weight of the MacBook Pro 14-inch. And it comes in about 3.5 pounds, and it's quite noticeable if I'm lugging it around in a backpack with other textbooks. But considering all that power built into this form factor, a little bit of weight is not much of a drawback, but still something to mention. Another con that I do have to mention is the lack of customizability, and I'm talking about the hardware side. Now on any MacBook, you aren't able to upgrade the SSD manually by opening it up and putting a NVMe card inside. You also can't upgrade the RAM if you ever needed more RAM. But I do understand the RAM is integrated into the M1 Pro chip itself, but at least the SSD should be upgradable. But I know it's not much of a problem if you have external SSDs, but let's say you needed more power or more RAM, you would have to get an entirely new MacBook. So in that case, choosing your MacBook and the right configuration is very important, because you want this machine to last you years down the line. I just wish I could open it up and upgrade the parts on my own. It'd be a nice little feature to have. Now the final con, and it's probably the biggest, and that's the price. The base model MacBook Pro 14-inch sits at $2,400 Canadian. That's a lot of money. Now the opportunity cost of getting this MacBook compared to getting a gaming PC comes down to what you need and what is important to you. Now I can't take my PC anywhere, but I can take my MacBook Pro. But on the other end, I can't play AAA titles on my MacBook Pro, but I can with my PC. But again, it comes down to what you need and if it fits into your workflow. So based on the pros and the cons, is the MacBook Pro 14-inch base model worth it? I can say the MacBook Pro 14-inch is packed with high quality features. I can also say that for the majority of users, including myself, the base model is all you would ever need. It's more than enough. For the $2,400 price tag, I think this machine is well worth it because one, it will last you years down the line with the high quality of hardware and components that they've put into it. And two, it's powerful for whatever you need for it to do today and possibly for the future as well. Now, I'd probably consider getting the 16-inch version if the MacBook is going to be your sole monitor that you'd be looking out of, or if screen real estate is an important feature for you. But one thing I definitely recommend that you do is head into an Apple store or a Best Buy, go in and give these MacBook Pros a try. Try out the HDR video, turn up the volume and brightness, and just experience how good these MacBook Pros are. Now, if you found any value in this video, definitely give me a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thanks for watching.